She plugged into my solar outlet again. I didn't touch a single wire, just hit record and pulled a safe little stunt. Want to see what happened when the voltage went maximum, at least to her eyes? He noticed it the way people notice small things that don't belong. A cable across his driveway at first light, the soft click of a connector going into the outlet under the solar label on his garage. The street was quiet. Sprinklers were still working the edges of the sidewalk. He stood inside holding a mug and watched the timestamp drift from 6:13 to 6:14 while her taillights blinked once and settled. The next morning it happened again. Same hour, same cable, same easy way she stepped out, like it was her outlet too. He watched it a third morning and didn't say anything to the camera or to himself. He just put the mug down, opened the app, and saved the clips. He tried the soft approach because that's how people usually live next to each other. He waved from the porch when she pulled in that afternoon. She crossed the street with a HOA newsletter under her arm and a smile that fit the paper. "Hey," he said and kept his tone light. "I think your car's been using my exterior outlet in the mornings." "Oh," she said, glancing past him like she could see the outlet from there. "You've got solar, it's daytime, feels like it balances out. We're all trying to be greener, right?" "It's still my bill," he said. She nodded like she understood, and the nod might have meant something, except the next morning the cable lay across the driveway again and the timestamp read 6:11. He didn't wave this time. He watched until the charge light on the car flickered and went steady. He saved that clip too. He put a small sign under the outlet, "Private outlet, ask first." The letters were plain and neat. He tightened the 2 screws until the sign sat straight. He didn't think the sign would change her mind. It was there for him. The rest of the week moved the way those weeks always move. The trash went out. Someone on the street tried a new mower and it coughed twice before it settled. A plastic scooter stayed by the curb for 2 days and then was gone. Each morning, at roughly the same time, the cable crossed the concrete and the charge light came on. He made 2 lists. The first list was what he would not do. He would not touch the panel. He would not change settings. He would not try tricks with the circuit or anything else that turned a neighbor problem into something you read about. The second list was what he could do. He could document. He could ask once without sarcasm. He could bring it to the board if it kept happening. He bought a smart outlet meter that fit behind the weather cover and paired to the same app as the cameras. It wasn't expensive. It gave him plain numbers. He let it run 3 more mornings and didn't look at the totals until the week ended. When he finally opened the page, the numbers were small on their own and larger stacked together. He took a screenshot and put it with the clips. He talked to his wife about it at the kitchen table. She listened and didn't push him either way. "You can go back over there," she said. "Or we can bring it up on Saturday and be done." He looked out the window at the neat concrete, the outlet with the sign, and the roof line with the panels he'd saved for 2 summers to put up. "Saturday," he said. That night, while the dishwasher ran, he opened a simple video editor. He didn't add captions. He didn't add arrows or circles. He trimmed the starts and ends so each clip began with the car rolling in and ended after the charge light went steady. He put them in a row, one after the other. He watched it through and saw how the repetition did the talking. Later, he made a second version with sound from the driveway, and then he muted the sound because it didn't add anything. The next morning, he woke early on purpose and stood behind the front window. The sun was just starting to show above the roofs. Her car came around the bend and eased into the same spot, nose toward his garage, cable already in her hand. She moved the way you move when a routine has turned into a habit. He watched her plug in, and he watched the charge light blink and go steady. She stepped back and checked her phone. She never looked up. That afternoon, he added one more piece. On the screen of the inverter in the garage, there was a setting for the display theme. He swapped it from the default bar graph to a bright theme that made the numbers larger. Then he made a still image that said Max in big letters and set it as a background on the little tablet he used to check the system. It wasn't connected to anything. It was a picture. He left the tablet on the workbench where it would show through the garage window if someone looked in. On Saturday, the neighborhood felt like a neighborhood. Folding chairs went in trunks. Someone carried a glass pan under foil with both hands. He tucked a manila folder under his arm and locked the door. He didn't feel angry walking to the center. He felt the kind of tired that sits higher than your shoulders. Inside, the room had the usual coffee smell and the usual stack of printed agendas next to a plastic cup of pens. He sat 2 rows back. She sat up front on the aisle with a legal pad on her lap. When the chair asked for other business before they got to the veins, he raised his hand and stood without his folder. "It's small," he said, "but it keeps happening. My exterior outlet has been used most mornings by the car across the street. I asked once, I put up a sign, I installed a meter and a camera points that way. I'd like the board to set a clear expectation so it stops. He kept his eyes on the chair while he said it. He didn't look toward her. The chair nodded and asked if he had anything to show. He said yes and opened the folder. He gave the thumb drive to the volunteer at the laptop. The projector took a moment to wake up, and then the first clip filled the wall. There wasn't any music. The footage with the time bars along the bottom didn't need it. The car rolled in, the cable crossed the concrete, the light on the car blinked and held. It cut to the next morning and did the exact same thing. The third morning played the same way. In the fourth clip, as the car eased in, the little tablet on the workbench in his garage showed the bright background he'd left there. The letters were big. They didn't move. The clip didn't call attention to it. It didn't have to. She stepped closer to the open side door and then stopped. Her hand came up. It didn't touch anything. The cable came out. The car left. He stood to the side while the fifth and sixth clips ran. He didn't say, "See?" The room stayed quiet long enough to feel long. He nodded to the volunteer and the screen went back to the desktop. He handed the chair 2 printed pages, the small totals from the meter and the dates. He said, "That's all." The chair looked at the papers and then looked down the aisle. "Do you want to respond?" he asked. She didn't say anything at first, and a second went by, and then another. She nodded. "I thought because of the panels," she started and then stopped. "I shouldn't have." She put the pen on top of the legal pad. "I'll pay him back," she said. "I'll stop." The chair cleared his throat and asked if anyone had a motion. A man from 2 doors down raised his hand. "I move that we put in writing that exterior outlets are private," he said. Someone else seconded. Nobody argued. They didn't turn it into a bigger thing. They listened to the chair read the sentence out loud and then they voted. The eyes were a plain sound in a plain room. On his way out, she stopped him near the bulletin board. The fluorescent light above them had a soft flicker to it. "I'm sorry," she said. Her voice sounded like someone taking down a picture and finding the old nail under it. "I'll cover it and I'll get a charger put in. It should have been like that anyway." He said, "Okay." "Send me the number," he said. "I'll send installers if you want names." She nodded. He went home and put the folder in a drawer. Sunday was warm and slow. He installed a clear cover over the outlet with a small lock. He wiped the private outlet sign with a paper towel, and it looked new again. He changed the inverter screen back to the bars. The tablet with the Max background went back in the desk. A week later, he saw a permit on her window and then a new wall box on the side of her garage. It had a green light that came on and off in a steady rhythm. He stood on his driveway and looked at both garages. His had the clear cover and the small sign. Hers had the new charger and tidy conduit. The street between them was just a street again. They had a small barbecue that Friday. People brought simple things: a bag of chips, a bowl of cut watermelon, a pack of buns, and a grocery bag. She came with a salad in a glass bowl and a red extension cord tied in a knot like a joke. She set it on the table next to the chips and didn't make a speech about it. Later, when it got dark, the new charger's light cut on and off in the background like a metronome. He didn't tell the story that night. Other things took up the space. Someone's kid had learned to ride without training wheels. Someone else had torn up their hand on a stubborn shrub. There was talk about the school bus stop moving a block over. When he took the trash out at the end, the cul-de-sac smelled like charcoal and cut grass. The next week looked like the week before the trouble started. He still woke early. He still made coffee. He looked at the driveway out of habit, and there wasn't any cable across it, so he looked at the sky instead and tried to guess if the sun would be strong by noon. The app still sent him little notices when the meter saw anything at the outlet, and the notices were blank most days. When one did come through, it was his own leaf blower. On the last day of the month, he opened the power bill and compared it to the one before. The difference wasn't huge. He folded both and put them in the kitchen drawer where they kept rubber bands and batteries. He closed the drawer gently. The quiet felt good. He didn't think about the clips or the meeting. He thought about the new charger across the street doing what it was supposed to do without anyone noticing. In the mornings, he still kept the mug by the window for a minute longer than he needed to. Old habits are slow. Sometimes she pulled out of her driveway while he was there, and they waved without talking. The wave looked like the kind of thing you'd always done. It felt better that way. When a neighbor asked how it had gone at the meeting, he said, "They made a rule." "It's fine now." The neighbor nodded and told him the mailbox posts on the next street were all getting replaced. He said he hoped they picked a color that didn't need a vote. They laughed a little and went on with their day. He never used the tablet background again. It stayed in the drawer where the folder was. Every so often he thought about throwing it out, then left it alone. It didn't take up much space, and it reminded him of the way the room had gone quiet when the clips played, how the car had pulled up and the cable had crossed the same line again and again until it didn't. The whole thing had been smaller than the attention it took to fix it and bigger than it needed to be. That's how it goes. By the time the leaves started turning, the new charger across the street was just another piece of quiet equipment. On cooler mornings, he could see his breath when he carried the bin to the curb. The street that once held a cable like it belonged there held nothing now. He set the bin down and listened to the slow sound of the neighborhood waking up. Garage doors lifting, a dog shaking its collar, a single bicycle rolling somewhere out of sight, and went back inside. Which side are you on? Ask first, or it'll do anyway. Click subscribe and write in the comments.